Well, it's Matt, it's Jim, and it is a Thursday night. Actually, it's Thursday afternoon, I should say. Thursday night, we got some football tonight. Matt, I'll tell you what, buddy. If I may, I want to talk about uh, our bowl situation here. I
Hmm.
watched South Florida play ODU last night, and to be honest, since neither team's quarterback started in the game, and between the two of them, they had 12 players who are starters on offense and defense that didn't play in that game. And it got to be unwatchable. And to be honest with you, I was concerned somebody was going to get hurt.
Hmm.
The Can you hear me,
Yeah,
Matt? Yeah.
these rosters are estimated. I mean, when you talk about
Well, we lost Matt there for a second. He'll be back. Game was final was Old Dominion by a score of 28-10. They beat USF. Byron Brown, who was a USF starting quarterback, was not playing, nor was three of his offensive standouts, and so it was painful to watch. What was even more vexing to me was that Byron was standing there in a uniform. All right, let's bring Matthew back. Okay, Matt, welcome back.
there we go.
There
Hopefully
you
this
go.
doesn't turn off the video, so hopefully it doesn't cut out again. I don't know what was
Yeah.
going on there.
Well, sometimes
Um,
with gremlins in the area. I was just saying that um, Byron Brown, who and four other members of the starting offense for USF didn't play. And in fairness to ODU, their starting quarterback and at least two or three of his key players on their offense didn't play. So, it was not anywhere representative of either team. And the reason I was saying somebody getting hurt, um, the kid that started for South Florida last night, was a sixth year senior, and he had never started a football game.
mm,
And they're running Alex Golish's offense, which is
oh,
difficult to do without Alex Golish there. And it was you saw kids that were running routes that made no sense. They were and tackling angles. It's hard to explain. You know how this works. Tackling angles. If you don't know how you're doing it and what you're doing, you can hurt somebody. And
yeah,
there were three or four times the guys got tackled. I'm like, my God, I hope nobody got hurt.
yeah. So there's one direction that is the obvious one that we're going to take, but there's another point that I want to touch on when you're talking about these
Sure.
opt outs, and it's a little bit of a broader point in the spectrum of college football,
Hmm.
and I think a point that people tend to miss in the discussion of like group of five teams and why they may not deserve an automatic spot at the table. Um,
Hmm.
the group of five teams now are not the same group of five teams that they were in the past. Like these guys,
Hmm.
Byron Brown's entering the transfer portal. It's not
Hmm.
official yet, but all signs point to him entering the transfer portal, most likely following his head coach to Auburn.
Hmm.
Um, but it it decimates these rosters. This transfer portal does because these top percentage of guys they're
Hmm.
not playing in the bowl games. They're not staying at these rosters when they play well enough. And there's a credit to them, but when they play well enough, they enter the transfer portal and they go to greener pastures, which they've earned. They've earned that opportunity. They've earned that right. But it's something that people tend to miss in it's something that people tend to miss in the greater argument of this G5 versus power forward debate. Is the G5 is not the same that it used to be pre-transfer portal, pre-NIL, all this other stuff, because these rosters get decimated. The top, some of them get decimated. It's not the depth. What made G5 teams good and why they would upset, why you could have an App State versus Michigan type of deal is because the high-end talent was right. And people bring up like, well, thank God, Khalil Mack wasn't like, he was a G5 guy. That's true. Khalil Mack was. He was fantastic at Buffalo. But guess what? If Khalil Mack played in today's college football, he wouldn't be at Buffalo for his entire career. He'd be in year 2 and he'd be on his way out the door. So these rosters get decimated that way. And then you also have just an overarching point in terms of the bowl games themselves is all rosters get decimated. Like everybody suffers from the transfer portal. But while you have a lot of G5 teams suffering from mainly the transfer portal, like, yeah, you're going to have a couple guys, maybe like 1 or 2, maybe sit out because they're thinking about the draft. But it's not often. These bigger schools, talked about Clemson and Penn State in the pregame, in the pre-show. And those schools like that, they get decimated by the transfer portal, but they also get decimated by the NFL draft because just because they didn't have a good season doesn't mean they don't have NFL talent on that roster either. And it doesn't mean that other people aren't going to go look for greener pastures on their roster as well. So you're getting these diluted bowl games, not just because of people sitting out for the NFL, but because of the transfer portal as well now.
I think the transfer portal is probably the single most important part of that. And to your point. And so that begs the question, right? The question being, if this is going to happen, then why don't we just move everything to a pay-for-play situation where you've got contracts, with universities, and it's like a professional league. You might as well do it. Right now, this ain't working. And if we move to a 16 team, which we will eventually do that, then there's no sense in having bowl games.
No, it does. It's going to continue to greatly diminish, and that's where you get into the like the Rick Neuhauses of the world, who comes up with that game plan of play them early season. I saw one that said play them late season. Make that the 13th game that teams play, and use it as an extra bullet point for these college football playoff resumes, which is a good idea. I think the matter of the fact is that there's going to be a lot of ideas that are better than the system that we have built now. And I think you and I both can sit here and we can run up and down the table of issues. College football has a laundry list of issues. Just from like I guess business side would be the best way to describe it. In terms of the issues that college football has. And those are going to exist for a while now. You're headed probably more towards a collective bargaining agreement type of deal in terms of the way college football is played and their structure, to where NIL maybe is more what NIL was intended to be rather than more of a just pay for play structure. And these guys are actually just getting paid because these people want them to advertise with them, not because they want them to attend their school. That's something the calendar we've hashed out a lot. College football has a laundry list of issues. The issues seem to be becoming more apparent year by year. But you don't want to change the sport entirely, but you have to make changes that are for the betterment of these players and these coaching staffs overall.
Yeah, I mean, look, if as you said, and I don't begrudge anybody who wants to be involved, right? If you played and you want to go to another school and it benefits you monetarily or benefits you, academically or whatever, it is the reason that you make that choice. I don't begrudge anybody that. I don't begrudge coaches, making better deals, right? And to your point about the G5, well, G5 right now has become like the AAA farm team to colleges, P4 teams. But my point is that if you're going to do that, which is fine with me, then set it up like a professional league and just do it that way.
Yeah.
And the bowl games, which, by the way, to be honest, and I'm being honest here, okay, I've had the pleasure of doing a number of bowl games over the years. 40 bowl games are ridiculous. There's no reason for that. I mean, it's programming for ESPN. It's good advertising. If you're gonna cut it down, right? Which, pare it all off. There's the Cure people last night. The Cure Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
They had to lose money on that deal. Okay, I mean, it just Orlando has 3 bowl games. Tampa used to have 3, but now they have 2. Jacksonville has 1. I mean, there's cities around the country that are tourist destinations that basically have them. But then you have the places like Birmingham, you have the places like Memphis, you have the places, where having a bowl game is something that the community really gets behind. And those are going to be the losers. And the other thing is that a number of these bowl games, the kids get to go. I mean, if you look at the Penn State game, in the Pinstripe Bowl against Clemson, what would it be like as a college kid to walk into Yankee Stadium and play a game, or walk into Fenway Park for the Fenway Bowl, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that now is nostalgically not going to happen, because I can assure you, because you had mentioned about monetarily situation, right? I assure you, advertisers are not going to pay for this. I mean, I'm guessing that ESPN is freaking, because they're going to go, okay, on one hand we get the playoffs, on the other hand we're going to probably lose 8 or 10 sponsors, because they're not going to want to pay for this crap that we put on the field.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if ESPN would scramble as much, just because they have other stuff that they can program. Like the college basketball option is there for ESPN, and these like, they have Feast Week in reference to Thanksgiving, and they have some Christmas tournaments as well. So there will be college basketball that they could maybe replace their programming with. But
I'm not as worried about the programming, Matt, as I am the fact that the money that these bowls, bring in, and the advertising that they bring in, is what I'm talking about. In other words, the sponsors of these bowl games, right? They pay ESPN that sponsorship, the cash, and then that cash flows out to each and every one of the conferences, because schools don't, unless you're Notre Dame, schools. Last night the American Conference got whatever money that was paid to USF, and ODU got are they in the Sun Belt? Or they were in the conference.
I think so.
Sun Belt. So the Sun Belt got the money. So I guess what I'm saying is, no, you're absolutely right about, does ESPN have the ability to put together a strong college basketball schedule and make up the programming. Perhaps they'll replace the bowl games with basketball games being played, in Birmingham and in some of these other cities where they're going to lose a potential bowl game. So maybe that's a possibility. But again, I think that unless kids are playing in the playoff, there's absolutely no reason these days, to your point, to try to prop up a bowl game that anybody who went to see it last night, or I'm sure in games to come, are going to say, why am I paying this money? Why am I, trying to support my team when my team isn't here?
Yeah. And you talked about the pay that goes to these smaller conferences and some of these bowl games. That's something that's, as the bowl games shrink, you're going to get less and less G5 teams in these bowl games. And it's something that signals, more of that move to the NFL type model in college football. because as we move into these larger conference schedules, these FCS and these group of 5 teams, they get paid to go play at these big places.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be less of that money to go around to
Mm-hmm.
all these teams. That's already apparent. And then when you start cutting the bowl games, like these schools and these conferences their funding is going to be impacted significantly as until we do really shift the model entirely. And it's going to be I'm not sure how easy it's going to be for these programs to necessarily survive financially, all things considered. Um, Obviously, they'll have their grant of rights with the conference. That'll bring in money, and they'll have their ticket sales. But all of these other channels of revenue are slowly starting to dry up in the new landscape of college football.
Yeah, and to your point, whoever Georgia's schedules on a yearly basis and they always play what a G5 or school during the season, somewhere along the line. If you play in an SEC stadium, or if you against an SEC team, or if you play against a team in the Big Ten, you're going to take home a check of about anywhere from $800,000 to $1 million. Okay, that is equal to a bowl game for a G5 school. So that's how important it is, and of course that money goes directly to the college itself, so it doesn't go to the conference. So again, these are incredibly important situations. But when you go to 9-game, play situations, as you say, it cuts down the opportunities for the bowl games to play. I'm sorry, for the G5 teams to play against these major colleges where they actually pick up a check and go home.
Yeah, I just don't know how they'll replace this revenue. The G5 is going to have to come up with their own model when the Power 4 eventually goes to its own model. Maybe you have something in the way of the Division 2 is the only Division 2 and Division 3 obviously are NCAA championships still. I think that's what people forget about March Madness. Like at the end of March Madness, they don't hand them a different trophy. They still get the NCAA championship trophy.
Right, yeah.
College football is different from every other sport in that aspect. So when the Power 4, it seems like inevitably branches off, does the NCAA approach these guys and give them a tournament? Give them a postseason in the way that they do Division 2 football? Just at a little bit of a higher level.
It's definitely a thought. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I would like to see, honestly, if they're going to go to an NFL type, deal, I'd like to see them adapt the English Premier League system, where the bottom feeders of the of the quote unquote NFL type drop out if they're not competitive, and the teams that go up could go up into the NFL are coming from the G5. But I think the G5 championship, like you said, like an NCAA deal, makes a lot of sense. I mean, it gives them something to play for. And again, just like the transfer portal is still going to be there, and they're still going to be involved in that. Maybe what they're going to have to do is play less games, because I mean that's what if you know a lot of I've seen a lot of D2 and D3 sports, and they usually end up playing ending their season 2 or 3 weeks prior to the major FBS situation. So from that standpoint, they're well into playoffs at the time when the other, the major college playoffs are starting. They're already well into the, their playoff system, and closer to being finished than is the the top of the pyramid there.
Yeah, that's because their schedule makes a lot more sense in the grand scheme of of yes, there is still school going on for these guys technically.
Mhm.
But in terms of your relegation idea, that almost feels like something that has to be included. Like you can't have Purdue sitting there winning 2 games a year and just have them keep sitting there. Not only that, but we've seen that teams are capable of rapid ascension, really throughout the last few years. James Madison was not was not a, an FBS school 5 years ago.
Right.
They were still in Division II. They made the leap. Now they're in the college football playoff.
Mhm.
They won the Sun Belt. I can't remember if they won the Sun Belt their first year. I know they were in the championship their first
They
year.
came close, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look at Indiana, a career bottom feeder in terms of football, and
Mhm.
they've made a rapid turnaround. So rapid turnarounds are possible, especially in the current model of college football. So it's
Mhm.
something that you absolutely have to have because those programs at the lower level can rise the same way that James Madison did and Indiana did. And the programs at the bottom should not be rewarded for just sitting on their ass doing nothing. Because, I
Mhm.
mean, with all due respect to Purdue, after Jeff Brom left, they pretty much just gave up
Mhm.
on football, and they haven't been good since. It's something that I don't get because football is such an important revenue stream for so many of these
Mhm.
schools, and maybe they don't invest in it because they've had a top 10, top 5 basketball team for the past 3-ish years, somewhere in there. Regardless, it's been really good throughout. Um, are they prioritizing basketball more? And if they are, that's fine. But you've got to be willing to make that sacrifice of having your football team relegated in that model.
Well, here's one of the things that I can't fathom. Okay, and we know, the situation with the SEC. We know the situation with Big Ten. Um, University of Maryland is it's a fine school. It's they've got uh, outstanding academics. They got a wonderful on campus stadium and basketball center, and
Mhm.
they just don't. And I'm talking about the fan base and seemingly the school. They just don't turn out for football.
Yeah,
They're great. On the basketball side, they support the basketball, but you could play. You could. I mean, hell, some of the top schools in the country, Penn State. Penn State was supposed to be Maryland's, rival. Well, that
Mhm.
didn't happen, and there's just no. I think a lot of it has to do with: is there a culture of football? Is the culture of football in that university something that people care about? And if they don't, they're not going to turn out. And look at Rutgers. I mean, hell, Rutgers, both Rutgers and Maryland and um, not Indiana, Purdue, you mentioned earlier, they're in the red. How do you lose money in this? I mean, it's almost impossible.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's
It's like
so.
Major League Baseball. We're always harping on the Pirates and harping and on on guys who don't spend any money. Well, here's universities who, by the way, even though they're getting all that money, which they are from television, they're still banging these kids for the for um, extra money in their activity fee.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's frustrating because they have the ability to if they invest in football. Like
Hmm.
we talked about it yesterday with Arizona State. When you build a winner,
Sure.
people will show up. I think people tend to
Hmm.
forget. North Carolina sold out that first home game against TCU, and then they
Right.
got waxed on the field. And I mean,
Hmm.
there's no reason to show up for games after that. And I
Hmm.
mean, by the way, UNC backed it up throughout the season that they shouldn't have been showing up.
Yeah, that's true.
So there are places that they may not historically be football schools, but man, if their football team's winning, people are going to start showing up because there's a certain level of importance that football carries with it, and maybe
Hmm.
they don't do it the same way that they do it in the SEC or they do it at Michigan and Ohio State and Penn State
Hmm.
and some of those
Hmm.
bigger schools. But there are places that have really good football fan bases that just aren't tapped into in the North. Like
Hmm.
there are places in good football cities Northwestern is right on the outside of Chicago, if I am correct. When
It's
they
a
have,
suburb of Chicago.
so it's a suburb of Chicago. They're building a brand new stadium. If they
Mhm.
back that football roster up with cash, there's going to be
Mhm.
people that show up. They have big time alumni.
Mhm.
Um, same goes for Purdue and Indiana. Like they're in there. People show up for Notre Dame. I know Purdue's not Notre Dame. I know Indiana's not Notre Dame. But guess what? Indiana's selling their joint out every single week because they built a winner on the football field. So when you build winner, it's the same thing as the Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. So it's on these athletic departments and to a degree these boosters to invest in these football programs, because if you do it, you're going to get a return on investment.
Yeah, in some regards, let's take Indiana for a minute. Back in the day, Bobby Knight ran. I mean, he wasn't the AD, but he might as well have been, because he was anything that even anything that the football team did was never going to be as important as what Bob did with the basketball team, and he made it that way. Okay.
Yeah.
Flipped in the other way, Joe Pa, when he was at Penn State,
Mm-hmm.
God help you if you tried to make that basketball program any better, because he wasn't going to let it happen.
Mm-hmm.
So there are people in these different places, and you're right. Look, Bloomington is a gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous campus. They have a lovely football stadium there, and now people, as you say, are showing up, and they realize, you know what, this football thing is pretty cool. Let's keep going on with it. Let's build it. And right now, their football program is a hell of a lot better than that basketball program they got.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got that going. You mentioned Arizona, right? Arizona, Arizona State. We talked about Arizona is having a renaissance there, which is good for them. But again, we have to figure out a way to not allow these guys to just cash a check because they're in the Big Ten, or cash a check because they're in the SEC and they don't compete.
Mm-hmm.
And if we go to an NFL model, then they have to compete.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and the relegation aspect of it, I think, is where you would, if we had the G5 situation and you had relegation, okay, then G5, some of these schools could be able to compete because they could possibly keep those players.
Mm-hmm.
Because
And
they're saying, look, if we can make it, because I mean that's what happens in the Premier League,
mm-hmm.
is that you've got some really good players on some teams that aren't not in the Premier League yet, but they make it to the high level, so that the four teams, because it's four teams
Mm-hmm.
every year, four teams drop out, four teams get at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And a great example of that, if people want like a dumbed down version of that, or to see it a little bit more in real time, Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds series, the Welcome to Wrexham, when they purchased the Wrexham Football Club,
Great.
it shows. They go out and they pay the money to sign these higher profile guys that played in some higher leagues in hopes of getting promotions throughout the leagues. So there is that. But the relegation thing would be important in that NFL model, because there has to be incentive to build a winning product. In the NFL, like college football is different than the NFL. College football is different than the MLB and the NBA. Like there are people knocking at the door waiting to get that call up. And if you have that model, then you have incentive to be good. You have incentive to be good at the lower levels of football as well. It creates competitive, like, I'm not sure if competitive balance is the right term, but it creates a desire to be competitive throughout college football, no matter what level you would be at.
Well, let's just suss that out just a little bit. You've got Memphis you've got Tulane, you got USF, you got North Texas, you got Boise, you got San Diego State, you got UNLV now is playing out of their mind. So between the Mountain West and the American, you probably got 10 teams that could really, push hard to try to get into that, because they're spending money to get there. And I think I would love to see that kind of thing because, then these teams in the G5 would be getting rewarded for doing what they're trying to do, which is get into a conference that's a P4 conference.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's incentive that just does not exist. Like the incentive in the NFL and the
Mhm.
incentive in the NBA, and they try to fix this. Or at least it seems like they're attempting to fix this. Same thing with the MLB through their lottery system or their draft system. Is teams are incentivized to suck. Like if you're not good, you're incentivized to be real bad instead of pushing to get better.
Mhm.
There's no incentive to where if you're a bottom feeder to go out and sign these free agents and stuff like that because you're going to get rewarded with a high draft pick. Like if you don't have a quarterback, why would I go and sign one in free agency or fill holes on my team in free agency when I know I cannot spend the money, I can keep payroll real low, and I can just go suck for a year or two and find the guy to fill those holes, and then eventually maybe I'll supplement the roster with it. But there's incentive to be bad, and that's part of the issue that lies in the NBA and that lies in the NFL. They talked about tanking has been a big issue in both of those leagues for a while.
Oh yeah.
And so there has to be incentive to be competitive. Because if there's not, then you're going to get an inconsistent product across the board. And that's what people get upset about the SEC scheduling cupcakes, which, when you look at the Big Ten schedules, is a bit ironic. But regardless, it like there's not incentive to have these teams. Like those games will still show up, but instead of having, Ferris State on the schedule, instead it's Vanderbilt and Purdue and these schools that have been bottom feeders. And I know Vanderbilt won 10 games, so I'll use Kentucky in this form. So you've got Kentucky and Purdue and these bottom feeder schools. They don't have really an incentive to be better unless for some reason a shift in thought comes from the boosters and they give it financial backing. Like there's just no reason to do that. So you have to be able to incentivize it.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I give credit to the guys at Vanderbilt because they got it right. They realized, okay, wait a minute, we got a little lightning in a bottle here. Maybe, just maybe, we can benefit from this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that helped them tremendously.
Yeah, it absolutely did. Like I put out the when I was talking about Diego Pavia and why he should win the Heisman. And by the way, given his actions post, it's probably a pretty good thing he didn't win the Heisman.
Yeah.
Between him standing on his tippy toes and shooting his shot at celebrities and being upset with the voters on social media, all that other stuff. But it is interesting because that is a job interview for him, and he just went up there and bombed it in every aspect. But I talked about he gave substance to Clark Lea's pitch. Like there's substance behind what Vanderbilt's done now. Like it's shown that it can happen. So and the same thing with Indiana is there's substance to Curt Cignetti's pitch. Like when it was fun when he came in and said, "Google me, I win." And everybody's like, "Yeah, man, but you're in Indiana." And then he did it the first year, like, all right. And then he does it a second year. Now you got real substance behind it there. So there's tangible evidence to point to where when you do invest in this stuff, it will work out for you.
Hell, and he goes out and beats Ohio State.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
That's not something that Indiana does often.
No. I mean, they continued to shut Ohio State out of the Big Ten title.
Yeah.
Ohio State hadn't won one in 4 years now?
Yeah.
4 or 5.
Well, if you had the Michigan and the Indiana together, yeah.
Yeah, because it went Michigan 3 years, Oregon, Indiana. So it's been
Right.
5 years since Ohio State won a Big Ten title.
Mhm.
And they kept that run going. And we talked about it earlier in this week, but I'm not sure there was a talking head who got behind a microphone and was like, yeah, Indiana's going to win this football game.
Right.
Unless they like graduated from Indiana.
Right.
So
Even then,
there is proof that this stuff works. You just got to be willing to invest in it. And right now, there's a lot of people aren't.
yeah, I mean, well, a lot of people haven't got the concept that we talked about here in a number of ways, and that is you got to hire what in essence is a GM from, probably the NFL, former GMs. USF put their guy, Rob Higgins in. Rob has the title of CEO of athletics, and they're running it like an actual franchise. They're running and that's all that's basketball, that's everything that's on the docket. But they're running it like professional franchises need to be run. Some of these universities still have the AD there, and the AD, is looking up and going, all of this stuff is something that they're totally unaware of how to handle it, and it shows. I mean, because you can give all the money in the world to any of these universities, but if they don't know what to do with it or how to properly allocate it, it's not worth it. You might as well take that money and invest it in, heaven forbid, the academic aspect of the university, because otherwise, you're just wasting your cash.
Yeah. I'm just going to throw this out here because it's breaking news. Former co-defensive coordinator at Georgia and off-field analyst for a little while, Will Muschamp has agreed to take a position as the defensive coordinator at Texas.
Okay.
It literally I got a text about it a minute ago, and now it was public, so I wanted to fill that in.
Will's good. Will's a good guy.
He is. Not only is he a good guy, he is a fantastic defensive coordinator.
He was at Florida. Remember, he was a head coach.
Yeah. I mean, he was at Georgia when their defense was really good. What a lot of people don't realize is he logged a lot of hours last year for Georgia on the week of that Texas game when their defense looked different. So he is a critical factor in really the success of Georgia's defense. In his time where he was the co-DC, he had an impact last year as well. It was just not as well seen, I guess. And he's going to go there, and Texas defense is going to get better. It's good defense already. It's a really good defense, especially talent wise. Schematically now, though, they're going to be sound. He is a fantastic defensive coordinator. It goes back to some guys are just really good coordinators. Will Muschamp, he was a fine head coach. He wasn't great and he wasn't horrible, but he is a great coordinator.
I will say this: I have not met anybody who has a bad thing to say about Will Muschamp. And in college football, that's rare. Somebody is going to say something, even if it's wrong, they'll say something. But Will is one of those guys who everybody likes.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to be said for that.
There is, and it'll go a long way to Texas's struggles this year. Yes, they had them on offense, but their defense didn't really help them at times. They were leaky on the back end a lot. So they had their problems defensively this year. It's a move that's going to definitely push them back towards I think there could be a school of thought out there that Steve Sarkisian's like top end run maybe was starting to dwindle a little bit with the results that they had this year. Not that the results were bad either, but it's one that's going to push them back into the forefront of the college football playoff discussion going into next year.
Well, I mean, at least they identified the problem and went out and got somebody who was good to fix it.
Yeah, well, they ID'd their problem on defense. Now we'll see if they can work with Arch and figure out their problems on offense.
Well, that's another story for another day.
Oh yeah.
That's that could be a 40-minute show into itself. Uh,
Yeah.
with that one. All right,
But
now
that
you had mentioned one quick, very sad note. Um, One of the truly nice guys in NASCAR, Greg Biffle, uh, perished this afternoon in a plane crash, and
mm,
thoughts and prayers are out to the Biffle family and to the
mhm.
NASCAR world. If you've ever been around NASCAR, it's a very family oriented situation. Greg, for many years, was a driver for the Ford group, which is something that through my late father have a tremendous passion with these guys. They're all wonderful folks, and the Ford racing people are great and have been very kind to me over the years. Greg's family, tremendous family man, and so we wish thoughts and prayers to them at this time, and again to the NASCAR nation on what is a bit of a dark day here um, on this Thursday afternoon. So that we're doing breaking news. Well, there's the breaking news on Greg. It's sad news, and we wish you know all the best to his family in what in essence is a very, very sad time.
Mhm.
Moving on, you have some reports about watching golf last night.
Yeah, I was impressed last night with the event that they put on. It's the right kind of event. Like it fits the mold of. I talked about it yesterday. How it seemed like it was an event that's more geared towards the short form content.
Mm-hmm.
Interact with a younger audience and stuff like that. And it was. It fit. They combined these timed events and stuff that you see like these content creators put out, and they do pretty good numbers, all things considered.
Mm-hmm.
And so they combined all that, and then they did it with the best players in the world. They did it with the right dynamics. Like Luke Clanton last night was fantastic. He was the youngest one there. Really kind of represents a little bit of the newer generation of golfer that's
Mm-hmm.
starting to infuse itself into the sport. He was fantastic last night. He was really good in they did a 14 club challenge, where you just alternate. You work through the bag, and you have a set target, and you're hitting these different shots with these clubs. Like he hit like a 160-yard 52 degree or something like that he just sculled, and he got it on the green. So watching those guys do that's fun. Watching
What
Roy
did he
Mac,
hit it with?
huh?
What did he hit it with?
He hit like a 160-yard shot with a 52 degree. He just
Oh,
He just bladed
okay.
it, and he bladed it and he cut it. That's the so they tried to hit because like they stuck him about like I think it was I think they said it was like 155 yards, something like that,
Mm-hmm.
out with wind against them, somewhere in that neighborhood. Playing more like 170, I think, but they stick them at the 170, and then they work through the bag. So obviously you're going to take your whatever these guys their like 170 club is, and then they just work their way through to where eventually you have these guys trying to hit an 170-yard shot and land it on the green with a putter and a driver. And it's different, but it's the type of entertainment. So you have that stuff. You have Roy McIlroy like sprinting and jumping in a bunker trying to finish a hole as fast as they can as a team. It was a different event, but it was an exciting event, and it's one that, if they utilize it correctly, is something that could be really good for the overall viewership of golf.
It's funny you mentioned that. How many times have you know we the amateur, the average hacker, right?
Hmm.
Um, you know, said bet a lunch or something. I bet you can't take a putter and hit the green from here,
Hmm.
or a 9 iron, and tee off with a 9 iron and figure out how far you're going to go with it. I mean, just basically playing around with the clubs that you have in the bag, right?
Hmm.
And and that's just something that people do, and I think that's entering that into the entertainment aspect of it, I think, golf into itself is a bit dry, you know.
Hmm.
It's hard to the personalities don't come out as much because the your the crowd and its proximity to the players is not. I mean, you see it on TV. Yeah, they get close, but they really don't get that close. Um, and and, um, and it's hard to keep track of
Hmm.
it. So, I think anything you can do to make people more excited about what they're doing is a definite plus.
Yeah, and that was another aspect that was really good last night. All eight of them were mic'd up. So you hear these guys talking to each other, and
Hmm.
you get to see their personalities coming through as they're playing these games,
Hmm.
and you know it was really good. It was really good for the game of golf, and if utilized correctly, it can be great for the game of golf moving forward. On another note, I thought it was really
Hmm.
interesting. The final challenge that they ended it with was the captain's challenge.
Okay.
So Scotty and Rory hit 10 shots from 10 different places. They started like 200 yards out, worked into like
Hmm.
175, 150,
Hmm.
on and on. And it seemed apparent that we learned just how important Ted Scott is to Scotty Scheffler's game. Either that or just how bad of a caddy Luke Clanton is.
That's funny. Oh man. Um, where's Bones when you need him, right?
Yeah.
The the one of the things that I've been impressed with, and I know some people out there have paid attention to it, some have not, is golf has tipped their toe in kind of what you're talking about with the miking and with the interaction with ESPN doing the following of the foursomes, which they've done, and the twosomes
Mhm.
whenever it goes to the weekend. And Sirius XM Radio has done an outstanding job of being in the moment with some of these guys with the audio. It's not as much on the CBS or NBC shows, but you know it's the kind of thing
Mhm.
that you want to see personalities, right? I mean, that's how we come to like players, and no matter what sport they happen to be, is how what's the personality. And golfers are hard to get a read on their personality as to what they
Mhm.
like, what they're like off the course. And we all, I think right now, to me anyway, the Rory's got a personality that some people like, some people don't. Um, I think Bryson DeChambeau is somebody who has become a fan favorite in large part because of his personality.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean that's what like last night was a great showing for just in terms of like viewing their personality. Luke Clanton, great great to see his personality on more of like a national television type scale. Shane Lowry, he's done stuff like they do the TGL, so you've gotten to see him some as well on a bit more of a national stage, mic'd up. But I mean he's a great personality. He's a really good entertainer. um, so these guys, it allows their personality to show through, and it's great for the game because it allows you to connect with players. And when you connect with players, you feel more connected to the game, and you're more apt to watch.
Right. Um, and again, like you said, that was where Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus was, where it was there was a dividing line. Everybody loved Arnie, and and Jack couldn't understand that
Hmm.
because he felt, well, I'm the world's, right now I'm beating Arnie every week,
Hmm.
and that was okay because Arnie didn't seem to affect Arnold that much. Um, he went out and he just played, and he played to the audience. He played to the crowd. He
Hmm.
would go out there. He would stand at a tee and he'd go, which there would be times when he's got the driver and he'd whack the ball and away it would go. And he's, before he would hit the ball, he'd say to the crowd, how far you think it's going to go?
Yeah.
And he would interact with the crowd.
Yeah.
But that's Arnie built the PGA. I mean, that was the way it worked. Nicklaus was there's no question that Nicklaus was a better golfer at the time than Palmer was, but he never got the interaction with the people. It was Jack was there to win, and Jack was there to be focused. Nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's the way it is. But personality versus non-personality. Some people are comfortable in their own skin. Others, they need that focus. And I get it. But you don't grow a game to a group of people that you're trying to, because demographics is destiny. Okay. You're going to only go as far as the demographics take you. And that means if you're skewing younger, that's great. If you're skewing older, that's not good. And Office forever, skewed, older. And they needed somebody or something to prop them up. Now, Tiger Woods was good for golf because he was so very dominant, but he was interesting to watch. He was never, Tiger was far from a very charismatic guy from the standpoint of interacting with the fans. That was more Mickelson's shtick. But you were watching a unicorn. I mean, he was playing out of his mind when he first started out and just was racking up the wins prior to some of his accidents. So and issues with his knees and shoulder, and then of course other things happened personally that took him off the rails. But Tiger was something that was a once in a generation type deal. But what you're talking about, what you saw last night, the idea of Rory sprinting to dive into a bunker because he has to hit that shot before the time runs out, is something that's entertaining because you get to see that he's having fun.
Yeah, and that was the aside from the personalities coming out and like the different is they all seemed like they were having fun, like they were enjoying what they were doing. And golf, for all that it is and the sport that it is, which I enjoy the serious aspect of it, but it is a very serious sport when you're out there. Like nobody's always laughing, having fun, unless you're Scotty Scheffler and Haotong Li, who actually was in it last night,
right?
Playing the back nine at Royal Portrush, where Scotty has like a 7-stroke lead on everybody else, and Haotong is just enjoying the experience at that point in time.
Yeah, I mean it's golf is a mind game. There's physical aspects to it, but it really just is one of those things where you go if you're playing it at a level like them, which God knows I've never played at a level like them. It's always you're setting one shot up to go to the next shot. And and you're trying to play. It's a bit of a chess type situation where you're going, okay, I hit this shot. What's my angle to get me either out of the trouble I'm in, or to stay in the fairway when I've got a shot that may not, I may shank it, I may screw it up somehow or another. And I think that's the fun part of golf. But you can do both. You can think about it, and you can. I mean, hell, how many times do you go out and you just ask somebody, in the foursome, what do you think I should do here? What would you use? What club would you use? How would you do it?
I mean, and the strategy aspect didn't leave them either last night when they did it. Obviously, it was faster, so you get a little more erratic results. Like they hit a few in the water. That's not something that they normally do. But like They were playing, so they played 2 holes in that speed golf round
Hmm.
where somebody hits the tee shot, somebody hits from the fairway, and these 2 guys alternate in the short game until you get it in the hole
Hmm.
as fast as you can. But on the first hole, on the first tee, they just hit driver. There's no, the hole was fine. You hit driver there. But like on the ninth hole, which was the second hole that they played, they didn't take driver. I think they took, either 3 wood or 5 wood or something like that,
Oh
because the way
crap!
the green was contoured in reference to to where the fairway ran. If you hit driver and you ran it all the way down the fairway, then you're working with a really skinny piece of the green. Versus if you hit a 5 wood and laid up a little bit, then you've still got the full length of the green to work with on your approach shot. So they didn't sacrifice necessarily strategy. Maybe they
Hmm.
sacrificed time and precision to an extent, but they didn't sacrifice strategy just for the speed aspect of it.
It's funny. I don't know about you. I am horrible with the woods. I'd rather take an iron, and
Oh yeah.
and I mean, I you know, when you start going to the 3 woods and the 4 woods, and it's like, man, just
Mm-hmm.
give me the driver, let me hit that, and then I'll take the irons from here on out.
Yep.
I have never been able to hit a fairway wood in my life.
Yep. I'm in the exact same boat. I can't hit them. Hey, it's something about I'll catch like maybe one in every 25 if I hit a 3 wood. That's about
Right.
it. But I can't hit a 3 wood. I get on par fives, and once it reaches about that 210 mark, I'm like, all right, give me my 5 iron. Anything outside of here,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna
Give me a
we'll get it
three.
as close as we can.
Yeah, give me a
So
3 wood. I mean a 3 iron. I'll do my best. I'll just jack up as hard as I can and just hit it.
yep, get it as
Uh,
close as I possibly can.
right. Yeah,
Yeah, the
I
woods
ain't
are
gonna
not
be
okay
able to play
for me.
that other stuff because it doesn't work for me.
Nope.
So
Nope.
anyway, all right,
Absolutely not.
there you go. All right. Well, look, why don't you weigh in a little bit on tonight's football game?
Okay, Los Angeles and Seattle battle for the NFC West. Battle really for the number 1 seed. And for Matthew Stafford, I think a lot more is riding on the line tonight. If he wins this game, I think it's going to cement his case for the MVP. I don't think he should have to win this game for it to cement his case for the MVP, but it feels like he does. The MVP award can sometimes get real flip flop at the end of the year, which I don't understand because it's supposed to be a season long award based on a full season's performance. I don't really know how Josh Allen's worked his way back into the conversation, but he has really with that win over New England. So this is a crucial game because people are going to judge the MVP award based off of this game. If Matthew Stafford wins this football game, wins the NFC West, gets the number 1 seed, and goes and plays well for the remainder of I think the 2 games they have left after this one, then he will have cemented his MVP case. And I'm not really sure there's going to be anyone that can catch him. On the other side, you got to be really impressed with the turnaround that Seattle's had with Mike McDonald in year 2 of him. They went out and they signed Sam Darnold and they traded away DK Metcalf and they made some moves and everybody was kind of like, what's Seattle doing? Like, are they just punting on this season? Turns out they weren't. Turns out they went out and they made the correct moves for their offense and they had a good enough defense on the other side to get the job done. Um, LA, they got a little bit of an uphill battle to climb. I've heard they've had some travel issues in reference to getting up to Seattle for this weekend. And that may or may not play a factor in it at all. There's the wide receiver Puka Nacua did his thing on social media yesterday, and a lot of people aren't happy with that, and I can understand why. Sean McVay wasn't. So are there distractions? I know Devontae Adams going to be out for LA as well, but this could also be a scenario where LA just goes up there and Matthew Stafford returns to the best version of himself throughout this season. Not that he's been bad the last couple of weeks, but he hasn't been that same tier necessarily that he was earlier in the year. And they might just roll Seattle. I don't see that happening. LA's run defense is much improved. Seattle's pass defense is top 5 in the NFL. It may be 1. I don't know off the top of my head. It's a fantastic unit. And with the loss of Davante Adams, the job gets significantly more difficult for Matthew Stafford. But if he does dice him up, the Rams will have that 1 seed. They'll have the NFC West, and he'll have his MVP trophy and a cemented case for the Hall of Fame as well. Well, I guess Jim isn't with us. Um, in that case, I'll just go ahead and touch on what's coming up really tomorrow and this weekend. We
I
have.
muted myself by accident. Sorry.
Oh, okay, okay.
I was just going to ask you, being around UGA, is there much buzz around about Matt?
About Matthew Stafford. I mean,
Mhm.
he's an alumni. People love him. You know, he
Mhm.
was the first quarterback that I remember as a kid
Mhm.
playing for UGA. So I, you know, I should when I was, you know, what was I? I was like, it's probably like 5 or 6 somewhere in there,
Mhm.
maybe 7 when I was little. But I remember thinking it was really cool because we shared a first name.
There you
um,
go.
um, I will say he has gone on record. He's not bought into the tradition. He doesn't like barking. He said he'll
Okay.
give people a go dogs. He's not a big fan of the bark, but no, the people in Georgia they love Matthew Stafford. You know, and the university. I'm pretty sure Kirby Smart's had him speak to the team before as well.
Mhm. Well, I know that as we talked about, Will Muschamp and
Hmm.
being a likable guy, there are a ton of guys in the NFL who just think, on other teams, who think Matt Stafford is just, one of the nicest people and best teammates you'd ever want to be with. And
Hmm.
and so you like to see guys like that, do well. And you like to see guys like Sam Darnold, who, who
Yeah.
Minnesota gave up on, uh, and goes, thank you for the year of your service, but we're moving on. And now he's in a position where, one game away from taking that team to the top of the mountain.
Yeah. I don't think Minnesota thought he could replicate the season that he had last year. If we're being honest with
Yeah,
ourselves, like I think that's the reason they're like. I think they probably looked at it a case of like, okay, what are the odds that he does that again and he
right.
continues to do that for the next couple of years
Yeah,
versus should we just sub our young starter in and
right.
maybe it's not the same way it looked last year, but he's not going to be that bad. Hint,
Hmm.
he has been that bad. Um,
Right,
and JJ McCarthy,
right.
and it's an understandable stance that Minnesota took, but
Hmm.
also when you look at it now with the luxury of hindsight, you're like, man, what in the world were they thinking?
Well, the other thing was Darnold wasn't going to, they could have sat down with Sam because he had a good year. Okay.
Hmm.
They probably could have sat down with Sam and made out a very team friendly, but yet, impactful contract. But when they didn't do it, then everybody started going, what the hell is with them? I mean, they, they sent Kirk Cousins to, out. So he ended up in Atlanta. Darnold's out there, what are they thinking? And so Sam signed with Seattle. You can't blame him, because
Yeah,
Minnesota didn't, offer him anything major.
yeah,
So he nails it. And, hello, here we go again.
and a lot of credit. I don't know his name off the top of my head. Seattle's GM deserves a lot of credit. People were really confused when they traded DK Metcalf. They were really confused when they traded Geno Smith. He was on the right side of history on that Geno Smith deal. I mean, Geno Smith he's not been no, he's been bad. He's been bad in Vegas. There's no. I was going to try and sugarcoat it. There's no sugarcoating it. Geno Smith has not been good during his time in Vegas, um, and now Seattle's in a battle for the number 1 seed because they got their quarterback. They got their quarterback decision in the offseason right. Minnesota didn't. They're paying for it, and Vegas didn't. They're paying for it as well. And those aren't the only 2 places that didn't get it right, but they're just the ones that were in that chain of those quarterbacks moving.
John Snyder, by the way, is the general manager of the
Yeah,
Seahawks,
yeah,
and president of football operations. You know, Gino, Gino's a career backup, and that's not me throwing shade on him.
hmm,
It's just that Gino can get you a win or two here and there, filling in.
Hmm.
but he's no long term, or even for that matter, one season quarterback. He's not gonna, you know, he just is. He's a Trent Dilfer, okay,
Hmm.
and you know, Trent is a journeyman quarterback who is, for most part, not gonna hurt you, but you don't want to hang your, and he's got a Super Bowl ring, so
Hmm.
but you don't want to, he can manage a game. He's not going to win a game for you, meaning he's not going to carry the team to a win,
Yeah.
but he's not going to hurt you, when he manages the game.
Well, I don't
Uh,
know if you watched Geno Smith playing football this year. He'll lose you a game. He loves
that,
throwing interceptions. He was a big
well,
fan of
yeah,
that this year.
well,
So
yeah, he's had his issues. There's no question about that.
yeah,
But a lot of that too is play calling and coaching and putting him in positions where he just simply can't um, execute.
yeah,
And
no,
you
not
know,
not to keep ragging on Geno Smith
right?
because that offensive line in Las Vegas was awful as well, and his stable of weapons for a majority of the year
Yeah,
was a Brock Bauerless receiving core that then traded away Jacoby Myers, his top weapon, at the deadline. So it's not like he was working with great tools to begin with.
right.
Uh, so mistakes were to be expected out of Geno Smith this year.
Yeah, and when you don't have those kind of people around you, and when you're running for your life, which is not going to be easy for Gino. He's been in the league for so long that running is a bit of a chore for him. He's
Hmm.
also not one of the biggest quarterbacks in the league either, so that doesn't help. So again, Vegas is just they're doing what Vegas does. I mean, in this case, I shouldn't just say Vegas. I should say the Raiders. They do what the Raiders do, and that is, they try to find players on the cheap and hope that they pay off. There's no major investment being made out with the Vegas team, and which is ridiculous because they're raking in money hand over fist from that stadium out there.
Hmm. Yeah, it was an interesting offseason strategy from Vegas because it almost felt like they kind of not fully based on the moves they made, but they did a little bit of the we're going to push our chips to the middle of the table and go all in.
Right.
When you sign Pete Carroll to be your head coach and you get Geno Smith to be your quarterback,
Hmm.
you don't know how many years Geno Smith has left. He
Right.
doesn't have a whole lot of tread left on the tires. And I mean, for the love of God, Pete Carroll is how old is he?
Pete's
He's
62.
he's how old?
Hang on a second. I'll look it up.
I thought he was like 74.
He might be.
But I mean, he's the oldest active head coach in the NFL ever, um, breaking Belichick's record. So these weren't moves for long term on
You're
either.
right. He's 74.
Okay, so these weren't long term moves on either of those deals that they brought these guys in on, and yet they still seemingly kind of went all in on them. In a confusing move when you still had a bad O line. You went and drafted a running back in the first round. He hasn't been able to really get going this year all that much because his offensive line's been horrible. Um, so yeah, it was an interesting set of offseason moves for the Raiders. But hey, now they're in a high position. Now they may get the number one overall pick depending on how things fall these last couple of weeks. And if they lose bad enough.
Well, maybe they'll be able to find a franchise quarterback, which they haven't had in a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
And
Yep. Yep.
that's not going to be an easy situation.
No.
All right. So, who do you like tonight's game? We got the Rams. We got the Seahawks. Uh,
Um.
Playing up in Seattle. That's a loud building
Mhm.
and not a fun place to play. But it's not like the Rams haven't been there before.
Yeah. This isn't even because I think if I was going football side, I would probably lean a little more towards Seattle in this game.
Mhm.
This is more of a personal want. I want Matthew Stafford to win the MVP. I want
Mhm.
Matthew Stafford to be able to cement a Hall of Fame case because I think he deserves it. I think he's been that good throughout his career. The problem is that he just spent a lot of it in Detroit. And would you would hate to see his loyalty not get repaid, or you would hate to see him suffer for his loyalty to Detroit for as long as he was there.
Yeah.
He didn't ask out. He didn't want out. He weathered the storm, and he showed up for, I think it was over 10 years
Yeah.
there in Detroit. And then finally, when they decided it was time for a fresh start in terms of the head coach and everything, they
Mhm.
traded him. They traded him to LA and got, they got a handsome package in return. I think, if I remember correctly, I think Jahmyr Gibbs was one of those first round picks that they got in return
Yeah.
for Matthew Stafford.
And Goff,
Yeah.
has been, has been lights out with the Lions.
Yeah, it's been a trade that's worked out for both franchises, and it's something that I want to see work out in a way of Matthew Stafford, making the Hall of Fame, because he deserves it. What is he? I know he's at least top 10 in passing yards in the
Oh,
NFL
yeah.
all the time.
Oh, yeah.
He may be
Well,
top 5. I can't remember the top of my head.
With the Detroit teams he had, he was playing from behind a lot. So, you're going to pass a lot. You're going to throw a lot of passes in situations like that.
Yeah.
I don't know what the line is, and I'm not worried about the betting because I'm not betting on the game. I think the key person for Matt tonight is going to be how well can Puka Nakua get open, because he's Matt's possession receiver, and moving the chains and playing in the Seattle, that's going to be key. And are they going to have any running game? Because Matt's best when they can do the play action stuff. So I think if they can establish a running game, and he can find Puka Nakua enough, he'll be fine.
Yeah, so I did just look it up. Matthew Stafford is currently 8th all time in passing yards. And assuming Philip Rivers doesn't go out there and just put on an absolute show this Sunday, he's going to pass Philip Rivers, and he'll most likely pass Ben Roethlisberger here in short order as well. And I don't anticipate him getting to the Aaron Rodgers 65,000 mark or 65.5 mark that he has set, which would put him inside the top 5. But he's closing in, and if he gives you another good season after this, he'll be top 5 in passing yards. So if you get top 5 in passing yards, an MVP, and a Super Bowl, and that's just disregarding whatever they could do in the playoffs this year, that's a Hall of Fame case if I've ever heard it.
Well, it is. And you just made it for him. So there you go. All right. Let's wrap things up today. And tomorrow is going to be a very interesting one because we've got college football playoffs starting tomorrow night. And what a weekend of a bounty of football, both the NFL and college on Saturday, and then the NFL on Sunday, and then the NFL on Monday. And we're just rolling along. We got a ton of football coming up in the next 2 weeks in the middle of the week. So that's going to be some fun stuff. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I should have full college football playoff game-by-game breakdowns live on Sports Talk Florida tomorrow. A couple of them are live. One of them's live already on Sports Talk Florida. I may go back and refresh that one so it's at the top. That way, fresh on people's minds and everything like that. But yeah, I'll have a breakdown of each game. And I talked about it yesterday. I said I went in and I looked at some stats and I tried to find a path. They're narrow, but there's paths for these G5 teams. I wouldn't bet on it. I wouldn't bank on it. In fact, I'd be more likely that they get blown out. But there's always a chance.
Yep, absolutely. All right. We'll see you tomorrow, guys. Hope that you've enjoyed the day, and be careful out there. We will see you tomorrow.